What is going on, everybody? TH back again with another video, and today we're here to talk about my Week 14 NFL Power Rankings. Hopefully you had a great weekend, enjoyed the NFL slate, and hopefully you're excited to talk about these updated Power Rankings. Love to have your thoughts down below in the comment section, but not a whole lot of movement there at the bottom of the screen. I'll kind of be quick here. The Texans, I think they hung tough pretty well against the Browns. As someone who didn't start the Browns defense at fantasy, I'm hurting kind of bad today. That leads me into, I really wish Davis Mills was playing this one. I just don't think Kyle Allen, moves this team any closer to its final goal. So that's disappointing. It was good to see Dameon Pierce get going, but all in all, just a team that's not ready to win right now. So they stay at 32. Bears, another team that hung tough, battled the Packers. Justin Fields against that, Packers run defense was a huge mismatch. And you saw it. He becomes the first player in NFL history to have 3 different 50-plus yard rushing touchdowns in NFL history in a career, and he did it in one season. So that's unbelievable. He's a special talent, but the rest of the Bears roster just needs a lot of work, especially on the defensive side. I think you really saw that against Green Bay, especially down the stretch, trying to keep up with Christian Watson, right? So then that takes us into the Broncos. They scored 9 points against the Ravens, and the Ravens defense really hasn't lived up to my expectations this year. And Russell Wilson just continues to be kind of an unmitigated disaster. The defense did their best, but, bend but don't break. And then, you get Tyler Huntley going 16 plays, 91 yards. We'll talk about that with the Ravens later on. But, when it comes to that, that's a really tough place to have your defense come up with a stop when a team can, use their fourth downs. They can just go 3 or 4 yards at a time and just milk the game away. And that's ultimately what the Ravens did. They executed to get in the end zone. And yeah, the Broncos would be like 10-2 or something like that this year if they scored 18 points in every game. It's just bonkers. Panthers were on bye, so don't need to talk about them. Rams, another team that kind of hung tough, only lost by 4 to the Seahawks, but just not a team that's ready to win right now. Stafford's out for the year. Donald missed this one. It was kind of Jalen Ramsey and Bobby Wagner trying to keep the team afloat. I will say the Rams pass rush looked reinvigorated, which is interesting considering no Aaron Donald, but the offensive line, lack of wide receiver depth, Tutu Atwell sighting, which was cool. But yeah, when you're turning to a Tutu Atwell, if you're the LA Rams, then things have certainly gone awry. I think that's fair to say. Falcons lost to the Steelers, so I'm going to keep them here at 27. I said this last week, when can we see Desmond Ridder, right? Because just Marcus Mariota's not making enough throws. Early in the year, he was making enough throws for this team to be kind of sneaky at 500, a little over it for points of the year. But now you look at it and it's just like, man, Mariota, if he hits 1 or 2 more throws, that game could certainly play out differently. But hopefully we get to see Ridder, because you don't lose much athletically. Yeah, Mariota's probably a little bit better of an athlete, but I think a lot of their QB run success has been Arthur Smith and his scheme and how he's drawn it up, which credit to Arthur Smith. I think you can do that with Ridder. So I really hope we get to see the rookie, but also doesn't lead to a loud vote of confidence if they continue to play Mariota over Ridder, and they're the ones getting to see him in practice every week. So what do I know? Next up, the Jags. Tough loss to the Lions on the road. Kind of a natural letdown spot. I was pretty big on the Lions this week from a betting perspective. But the Jags were favored when the Lions opened. They were 1-point favorites, but they were favorites when the Lions opened. Trevor Lawrence gets hurt early on. They have a fumble early. It feels like every week we're talking about Jags having an early fumble. That's kind of weird. But once that happens, then Trevor Lawrence misses a little bit of this game. It was just a tough hill to play catch up with and a steep climb to make. And the defense just, a lot of their early season production from players like a Devin White and Josh Allen, who was great this year, have kind of evaporated, unfortunately. That front seven's become pretty lackluster, and then it's just kind of Tyson Campbell holding his own on the outside. So that defense definitely needs a lot of work. Then we get to the Raiders up next, and hey, it's a 3-game win streak, right? So there's an argument to be made they should be out of the bottom 8, and this is a team with some talent, and it's a 3-game win streak, but I will say it's their first win in regulation since week 7, which is just an absolutely wild stat to me. But nonetheless, hey, this team got the job done. That's really all you can ask. And they took care of business against a division rival, which certainly shows something. And I don't think there's anything more to be said when it comes to trying to figure out what turned this around when you look at Devontae Adams' box score the last 3 weeks. They're just peppering him with targets, trusting him to be a top 3 wide receiver. In my opinion, probably still wide receiver 1 in the league. They're just leaning on him. And, what a world of difference that has made. On to the next group of teams. The Steelers are up to number 24. Solid win, but, Falcons are at 27. It's not like a resume-changing type of win. And it's back-to-back weeks now where Pittsburgh scores 16 in the first half. Maybe it was 19 this week, but just that's, we're seeing this team move the ball, and you're seeing Kenny Pickett grow, and you're starting to see the run game get a lot better, and more efficient, especially now you got Warren and Najee, both in the lineup at the same time. But this team, now the next hurdle to overcome is turning drives into 7 points instead of settling for 3 so much, because it was 16-3 at the end of the first half, but then the Colts make that interesting in the second half, and it's because you didn't put the game away in the first 30 minutes. Same sort of thing happened here. They only scored 3 points in the second half. That's a concern. Also, Deontay Johnson, man, with the drops, and then he has a near fumble in this game. We've been talking for way too long about him having ball security, hands problems, and we just got that 2-year, 18 and a half, maybe it's 18 solid, $1 million a year extension with the Steelers. And if he wants another one like that beyond that extension, or once he hits free agency, if he wants 20 plus million, he's gonna have to shore that up. So something to continue to monitor. Colts and Browns switch places. The Colts, they played a pretty good game, honestly, against the Cowboys until that fourth quarter rolled around, and then Dallas steamrolled them. So kind of two different games in one, but I still think this team's moving the ball better with Matt Ryan. I think Jeff Saturday has improved the offensive line. Now they had a much harder task against that Dallas pass rush, and eventually, where I think they were holding their own maybe for the first 3 quarters, not so much in the fourth. So, and then against with a very immobile quarterback of Matt Ryan, there's only so much you can do there. So, tough scene there for Indianapolis, and then the Cardinals were on bye. Then we get to the Browns, up 2 spots. I mean, it's not a super impressive win against Houston, but I guess the thing you have to talk about here is Deshaun Watson, first game of the season, first game in like 700 days. He looked rusty. He was missing a ton of throws short, and last week I talked about Pickett. He was just everything was low, but they were kind of majority of those passes were completed. Just took the receiver going down to the ground to go get it. These were just misfires. I mean, these were just trying to miss throws. So. You like to think if you're a Cleveland fan, that's going to correct itself with some time, but also you ran the ball well. The defense had a huge day, which is probably going to feel really good for Joe Woods, considering the hot seat he's been on, and then just the tumultuous season all in all that's been for the Browns defense. But I will say the last maybe 6 weeks it's been hot and cold. And last week they were kind of cold, and this week they were pretty hot. So again, 38 points just sitting on my bench in fantasy. I can't believe that I did not play them. That's going to cost me in my main fantasy league. That really sucks. The Commanders, they tied with the Giants. I'm going to keep them here at 20. Saints were beating the Bucks for 57 minutes of that game, and then the final 3 minutes happened. I don't know what that's all about, but this offense still struggles to move the ball. Like, even Andy Dalton, I think, made a couple big throws yesterday, but there's just a couple of teams that it feels like once you get to the 50 or beyond, they just become paper mache. And New Orleans kind of falls into that camp for me. And then, when push came to shove, their defense could come up with a stop. It's kind of the inverse of what we'll talk about with one of the teams in the top 5. Then the Giants, down 3 spots, tied with Washington. I think this is kind of natural regression. They're still 7-4-1. I actually will be at the Washington and Giants game in 2 weeks. Let me know if you want to see any behind the scenes footage or game day stuff or anything like that. I'll be happy to record something. But, I think this team is just kind of naturally making its way back down. I think they'll probably sit around here the rest of the season when it comes to power rankings, because I still think Brian Dable's done a good job maximizing the talent on that roster. But I think, living with Daniel Jones and not a whole lot of wide receiver depth has really come to fruition this year as the years played out for the Giants. And the Lions, another team that's on a nice little win streak, wins in 4 of their last 5. And, wanted to get a picture of Amon-Ra St. Brown for the slide, but this picture of DJ Chark is tough, and he had that 41-yard catch. You get Jameson Williams back this week, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown still going insane this year, making an argument that he's one of the best slot wide receivers, top 3 in that conversation, and maybe just a great wide receiver in and of itself. But now you look at that wide receiver room for Goff, and it's like, okay, you could do some damage with those 3, J-Mo, DJ Chark, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that's really enticing. And the defense did a pretty good job. I mean, I know Trevor Lawrence was in and out of the lineup for this one, but any sort of steps in the right direction, I think if you're a Detroit fan, you will take that, certainly. On to the top 16 now. Green Bay's up a spot, as is Tampa Bay. These two, call them sleeping giants for a lack of a better term. I don't think they'll, go far once it gets to the playoffs. The Bucs will probably win the NFC South almost assuredly now. But, two teams that have certainly not met preseason expectations, so that's disappointing. But, hey, Green Bay, you got a couple more touchdowns from Christian Watson. He continues to be, just an absolute end zone machine. I mean, this guy just does nothing but produce touchdowns. Congratulations to those who pick him up in fantasy. But, that's really opened up the offense, I think, a ton. Hopefully AJ Jones, Aaron Jones is okay. Had that little bit of an injury stint. I know he came back in the lineup, but he was even questionable coming into the game, so hopefully his health gets closer to 100%. 100%. Him and A.J. Dillon still one of the best tandems in the league. And then, even with the problems this Packers defense has had, there's points in a game where a superstar like Jair Alexander is going to bail you out, So Jair did that, gets that pick against Justin Fields, kind of opens up the window for Green Bay to complete the comeback. Because at one point, they were down, 16-3 in the first half. So big comeback there for the Packers and taking care of business. And, Rodgers owns the Bears, so that point continues to be true. Then we get to the Bucs. Kind of like what I was talking about with the Saints. They're losing this game for 57 minutes, lots of questionable play calls. And, I really feel for Todd Bowles because, sorry if you think this is political, but there's only 3 black head coaches in the league where it's 32 teams. That ratio's got to be evened out, and it's just, I hate saying this, but, like Lovie Smith's on a 1-year contract, probably not their long-term guy. Maybe that becomes Brian Flores' job, because I do think Houston was kind of leaning in that direction. But, Todd Bowles, he's holding them back. Him and Byron Leftwich both, which, again, sucks to say, black head coach, black OC, you don't see a whole lot of that in the NFL. So you want that representation, but those two have just not done a great job at their respective jobs, and it's kind of held the offense back. And I think it's kind of part of why late in the game, it's just like, Tom Brady, once you get into the no-huddle offense, he's doing a lot at the line, and they can move the ball a little bit better. So you even see Brady midway through the game. If you watch the Miami cast, the clip with Dana White on as the guest where, they're like, can you read this? What's going on? He was teed. He was upset. So, yeah, just an up and down year for Tampa, and I think that game kind of spelled it out. It kind of encapsulated what this year's been for Tampa fans. Titans and Patriots both lost, and both by double digits, right? 25-point loss for the Titans, 14-point loss to the Patriots, but I'm going to keep them here just because I do think there is a clear line of separation, at least as of right now. We'll see if Tampa continues to improve, if Green Bay continues to improve, but I think the Patriots and the Titans as a whole have been more impressive this year. I think their resume is a little more shiny, if you will, versus the Bucs and Packers. So I'm going to keep them there at 14 and 13, respectively. We get the Chargers down 3 spots. What is this team? I know division games are weird, right? You lose to the Raiders. Okay. But there's just so many games in their season where it's like, why did you not win that? That's a missed opportunity. You got to close that one out. So it just felt like another one of those. They were up 10-0, right? You get that pick 6 early. This team just, when it comes to playing with a lead, finds a way to mess it up, which, I'm talking about head coaches on a hot seat. As much as I may like Brandon Staley, he's got to be in that conversation, dude. It's just so bad when you look at the track record under his tenure and even beyond his tenure before he was the head coach. This team in his franchise just had such a bad track record of closing out games once they play from ahead. But Herbert, not necessarily a great game. It's just a tough one here for the Chargers. Their secondary got torn up. Asante Samuel gave up like 100+ yards and a touchdown, doing a lot of work against Devontae Adams for sure, but he did not look very good. So yeah, just a tough game there for the Chargers. You hope it's just Division 1. You can put it behind you and then make your playoff push, but I'm not so sure. Then we get to the Jets. They also lost, but Mike White just continues to battle. Yeah, he missed plenty of throws, right? Like the throw behind Braxton Berrios late. They even get another opportunity in the red zone. Missed another throw at the very end of the game. There's throws he misses, but then there's also that dig to Corey Davis where, Davis does a good job shielding off his defender, but, that dig was a throw on the money from Mike White, and that enabled them to even have an opportunity, and I think they did score on that drive to make it the 5-point differential that it finished at. So, he's doing enough right and a lot more right than we saw from Zach Wilson. So I still think this team and this offense is pretty solid. They just went up against the number 2 seed in the NFC, which, hey, if you were to go back to the preseason and say the Jets are only going to lose by 5 on the road against the number 2 seed in the NFC, well, my mind at the time might have been saying, oh, Tampa Bay, the 49ers, what? It's the Vikings, so it's a little different, but they still hung tough, and I'm still impressed by what this team's been able to bring to the table on another monster week for Garrett Wilson. That dude is certainly breaking out with a quarterback change, so I think that in and of itself is a big reason why Mike White's probably the guy rest of the year. Then we get to the Seahawks and the Ravens at 10-9. I kind of group them here together. They both move up. But these two teams aren't the same teams we saw at the beginning of the year, unfortunately. The Seahawks' run defense is starting to become a pretty big liability. You're starting to see, the Raiders kind of exposed it last week, and then, it was kind of picked on even more again this week with the Rams. Cam Akers has a huge day. I think season best numbers for Cam Akers. So disappointing there. But Tariq Woolen gets another interception. Geno Smith throws for almost 370 yards, pair of tuds, including the game winner to DK Metcalf. So there's enough firepower there, but I am worried about one, Kenneth Walker being hurt, and then also that run defense. Feels like two things that will be liabilities and maybe cost them a couple games. They'll kind of sneak in as that 7 seed potentially in the playoffs, maybe that 6 seed. We'll see what the Giants do. But, yeah, that's going to be an interesting playoff race to watch moving forward. I just don't think the Seahawks are the same team that really impressed me at the beginning of the year. It's certainly the same thing with the Ravens. Lamar Jackson gets hurt early on in this game. So it's going to be Tyler Huntley for, days to weeks is what the Ravens have put out. So we'll see. I mean, I think Huntley's a great backup for this offense in specific. But, they only scored 10 points. I mean, I guess a good Denver defense will get a better tell this upcoming week. But I do want to give a ton of credit to Tyler Huntley. Coming off the bench is never an easy task. And then when the game was on the line, 16 plays, 91 drives to go win the game, you sneak it in yourself, that shows cojones, right? So ton of credit there. I think this team continued to win games, but, their defense not meeting preseason expectations. Lamar was starting to struggle over the last, 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, he really is not the same guy who opened up the year as potential MVP candidate. And now you're turning to Tyler Huntley. You have all the injuries in the pass catching core, I mean, this team's just, again, not what they were at the beginning of the season. So they're in the top 9, but yeah, my faith and confidence in the Ravens has certainly taken a hit as the year's gone on. Now on to the top 8. We get the Miami Dolphins after their loss to the 49ers. I think that game should have and would have played out a lot closer, if not for a couple bounces of the ball. I will say missing your starting tackles against Nick Bosa in that pass rush, and also the interior of the offensive line for Miami got torn to shreds. And I think a ton of credit to Miko Ryans. We'll talk about this in a minute with the 49ers, but ton of stunts and twists, and that Miami offensive line, one couldn't keep up with, a guard seeing Nick Bosa come across his face. Are you going to get your hands on him? Probably not. But even if you do, are you going to stop Nick Bosa? Probably not. So, an awesome game plan from D'Amico Ryans. Ton of credit there. And, especially down those 2 tackles, they made life absolute hell for the offensive line. And in turn, for Tua Tagovailoa, and you could see his feet was all over the place. This was like rookie year footwork from Tua, which is, a step in the wrong direction if you're Mike McDaniel. But, you still get a huge game from Tyreek Hill. And, Jalen Waddle's injury doesn't sound too severe, excuse me. And, I think, couple plays play out differently, right? You had that crazy interception with the 49ers DB, his name's escaping me, leaping over, a Miami defender. And then, Tua just misses Tyreek Hill rolling out to his left and just airmails that throw. Just a couple plays where we haven't really seen these, weird mistakes or these kind of, call it fluky for lack of a better term, plays break against the Dolphins this year. This was the first time we've really seen that happen. So it'll be interesting to see. I obviously won't be able to see these 2 teams play again this year unless it's in the Super Bowl, which, hey, if it is, that would be awesome. But, man, I wish I could have a redo button and just see Miami playing at 100%. And I'd love to see Teron Armstead in this game because I think that makes a huge factor as well. Bengals, huge win against the Kansas City Chiefs. They seem to just have KC's number, which, ton of credit. They're 3-0. They've won all 3 of these games by a field goal. So 3 wins, 9-point win differential. That might say if you're a Kansas City fan, all right, yeah, we'll see them in the playoffs. I know a lot of Kansas City fans were saying that, and I totally get that. But, if you're a Cincinnati fan, you're like, hey, keep them coming. We've won 3 in a row. Burrow's got Mahomes' number. And, I will say, Lou Anarumo is the DC. I feel like I say this every time the Bengals beat the Chiefs. So maybe I should just keep this fully ingrained in my mind. But Anarumo's done a fantastic job as their DC. And, how much he's changed his game plan game over game against Kansas City has just been phenomenal. Last year, especially in the playoff game, I think the broadcast did a great job highlighting a lot of 3-man fronts, dropping 8 in the coverage, and just trying to take away Tyreek Hill, the deep ball. This was a different game plan, and really, Cincinnati relied on 4 pass rushers getting home, making an impact, and causing enough pressure against Mahomes. So, I want to give him a ton of credit, and also, Lou Anarumo is down his best cornerback right now in Chidobe Awuzie, and I thought this would be the game that Kansas City kind of exposed it. Awuzie not on the field. Okay, now you feel it. Another week where, they put up 24 against them, but they won, so you don't really think about it. So, really just impressive job. Down perhaps your best player on defense, certainly your best cornerback, second best secondary player, maybe right there with Jesse Bates. Yeah, huge impact player gone, and Lou Anarumo's just continued to churn out great game plans against Kansas City. It's a ton of credit there. A guy who certainly could be a head coach candidate once we get there this offseason. 49ers Vikings going to stay put despite wins. For the Vikings' perspective, we'll come back to San Francisco. It was a close game. It felt like there were points late in that game where they could have pulled away, but, typical Minnesota fashion, they keep it close. They're now 9-0 in 1-score games, which I think they have 10 wins on the year. So maybe win a couple more 2-score games or beyond. That'd be good. But hey, if you're looking for a difference between the Zimmer and the O'Connell era, or the Rick Spielman and the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah era, winning close games. Minnesota before and even now always finds themselves in close games, but with Zimmer it felt like they were always losing them. The perfect example is the Cardinals game. They could have taken down Arizona. Arizona ended up being the last unbeaten team last year. The Vikings could have ended that in week 3, but a missed field goal, they end up losing by 2. And things like that. Versus this week against the Jets, and I think Jason Garrett put it perfectly on Sunday Night Countdown. They won the red zone, which is not something you hear all the time. Like, did you win the third down battle? Did you win the turnover battle? Right? Did you win the end zone battle? Well, the Jets got in the red zone 6 times, only punched it in for a touchdown once. So, Ed Donatel, I give him a ton of credit. It's kind of a Bill Belichick-esque thought. Plenty of other DCs have had the similar mindset where, yards aren't points, dude. Move the ball down, but once you get to the 20, we're going to make your life hell. And I think you really saw that on display against an offense with capability and firepower. So, a ton of credit there to the Vikings defense coming up with stops when they needed it. And then back to the 49ers. I think D'Amico Ryan's just an inspired game plan, utilizing those stunts and twists. And you're starting to see teams really rack up their stunt percentages, right? Like Dallas was kind of ahead of the curve, and San Francisco's been big on it over the last, for a majority of the year, but especially a whole lot over the last couple of weeks. And then the rest of the NFL is kind of keying in. Oh, yeah, this is just kind of a free edge we can find just because it's hard for offensive linemen to keep up with a moving defensive end who's probably faster, or a defensive tackle for that matter if they're breaking out wide. Anyways, let me get out of that diatribe. But yeah, I think a great game plan. I think the 49ers pass rush, all players on that front played really, really well. Got some timely interceptions. One was just the overthrow from Tua, but then, a great play. Again, I can't think of the defender's name who made that play, but you also have a little bit of, the Talanoa Hufanga giving up the big play to Tyreek Hill. So you give in your take there, but I think there was enough good on the defensive side. The real question with San Francisco is going to be quarterback, right? Like, the skill position group's great. The offensive line, solid enough. I think this week, actually, the interior offensive line got beat up a little bit. Felt like Melvin Ingram was kind of living in the backfield, but also I think part of that is Brock Purdy, right? Like, I know a lot of people who were saying, Brock Purdy played a pretty good game. I don't think he played bad, I guess, for a 7th-round rookie, but I think once you take that consideration out, that, yeah, he's a 7th-round rookie, he didn't play great. Like, there was one, a sack for Melvin Ingram where it's like 3rd down and Brock Purdy spins back into what was a blocked Melvin Ingram, and it became a sack. And it's just like, that pocket awareness just isn't there yet. 7th-round rookie, right? Mr. Relevant. You wouldn't expect that. So now they signed Josh Johnson, and now with Baker Mayfield being waived by Carolina, I think they got some decent options. I think Josh Johnson's not a terrible player, right? He's not top 32 QB, but he had some games, hit that huge game against, I can't remember against who, but I think it was Thursday Night Football, but for the Jets, he had like 400 yards passing, 3 tuts. He had some big games, and, the Jets, Mike LaFleur, disciple of Kyle Shanahan, basically lived in that offense already, so I'm kind of excited, and plus you get the mobility factor that they were kind of excited about, or not kind of excited, they were excited about with Trey Lance, so this will be interesting to see. I'm curious to see what Josh Johnson looks like in this offense, or if they sign a Baker Mayfield, what he could potentially do for his career stock, getting in that offense with those skill position players, because that could be a career-saving type of situation to fall into his lap. So the QB situation is going to be huge moving forward, but I just don't think Brock Purdy's the guy. So good on San Francisco getting Josh Johnson. I think it's a much better option. And then, we'll see. Baker Mayfield could certainly be in play. The tough part there is Josh Johnson signed off a practice squad, so he has to be on the active roster for 3 weeks. So I think San Francisco's been carrying 2 QBs. So I don't know if they'll get rid of Brock Purdy. He's been their backup pretty much all year long once they traded Nick Mullins. So I don't know. We'll see. Baker might be going somewhere else. Anyways, let's get on the top 4 here. The Chiefs fall down 3 spots by number 1 ranking. They got to figure it out against Cincinnati, man. That's a team that they're more than likely going to see in the playoffs, right? Like if KC, especially now with the Bills holding the number 1 seed, Kansas City, there could be a game in Arrowhead, 2 versus, 4 in the divisional round, or, whatever the case ends up being, against Cincinnati, 2 versus 3, whatever. And they're going to have to win that game. Obviously, they're going to have to win that game if they want to have a Super Bowl chance. So I'm fascinated to see this 4th matchup. Now, I should say, 3 times is enough of a sample, but 3 wins, 9-point difference. I still think Kansas City's the better squad, and that's why I have them ranked higher. And I think if they were to play in Arrowhead, it'd still probably be Chiefs 2.5 on the spread. It was 2.5 in Cincinnati, but another Bengals win. I think if you were to flip it to KC as home, I think you keep that line. Maybe it's 1.5. Maybe it's straight pick them. But I think Kansas City would be able to get the job done. I'd be interested if they make it a 4th straight win for Cincinnati. Then you know what? There's just some mismatch that I'm not seeing yet that clearly is working against the Chiefs. That maybe eventually I'll figure it out. But got Kansas City falling down 3 spots. Cowboys, played a close game against the Colts and then absolutely pulled away. The offense in the 4th quarter was fantastic. The defense just had Indianapolis scratching their heads. That 4th quarter, 33-0. Need I say more? So they're up a spot. Eagles dominated Tennessee. And actually on the hurry-up offense, one of the props that we pushed down pretty heavy was A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Both of them hit their over receptions, over yards, each found the end zone as well. 2 touchdowns for A.J. Brown in a revenge game too. And A.J. Brown did not disappoint. So hopefully you listened to our player prompts there on the hurry up offense last week. Gave you some good plays there on top of plenty of others. So hopefully you come back and join us for this week's episode on Thursday. But yeah, just a dominant showing for the Eagles. And it was great to see them win this game through the air, right? Especially down Dallas Goedert. It was good to see Hurts throw for almost 400 yards, have 3 passing touchdowns, get back to the Eagles that we'd seen dominate at the beginning of the season. And then the Bills back up to number 1. I mean, I still think they're the best team in the league. Stephon Diggs is just an absolute stud. And that New England defense, I think, in a lot of ways should be built to slow down an offense like Buffalo. But Stephon Diggs just said, yeah, try to take me away. I dare you. Josh Allen's still a little turnover prone, which certainly concerns me. So I almost put the Eagles at number 1. Just because I am still concerned about Josh Allen's turnover proneness. But this game, it didn't hurt them, and I'm still hoping. I'm hoping it's kind of like a Stafford situation last year with the Rams, where the regular season, let them take a shot. We're still a good team. We'll make the playoffs, but then once we get to the playoffs, you got to hunker down. Now, granted, Stafford still has maybe the most infamous dropped interception of my lifetime, with Jaquiski Tart laying an egg basically and taking away the Super Bowl ticket for San Francisco. Other than that, though, I think Stafford played a pretty mostly clinical playoff run last year. And if you're a Bills fan, you're hoping, once we get to the postseason, Allen will be a little bit more safe with it. So that's what I'm going to buy into right now. But I still think roster-wise, best team in the league. So tell me what you think about these Week 14 power rankings down below in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who's your favorite team? What do you think about them at this point in the season? Where should they be ranked? Love to have your thoughts. It's a conversation down below. I respond to every comment, so let's talk about it down in the comment section. Hopefully you will enjoy it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. It helped me out a ton too. If you hit that subscribe button while you're down below, leaving me a comment, help join the community, join the channel, doing a lot of exciting stuff moving forward. So that's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej. I'm signing off.